My son hadn't spoken to me for 13 years. Then one day he showed up at my door with his wife and expensive luggage, announcing, "As your son, I'm entitled to some of this. We're moving in. You've got all this extra space anyway." I smiled, doing what I should have done long ago. The audacity struck me harder than I expected. There he was, Kevin, standing confidently on my doorstep, just as entitled as ever. 13 years of silence, and this was his grand return speech. If you're watching this, make sure to subscribe and tell me where you're from. I suppose I should explain how we got here. How my own son could ignore me for over a decade, only to reappear once he heard about my newfound wealth. But first, let's talk about what happened next, because some moments deserve to be savoured. I looked at Kevin and his wife, Nora, who stood a few steps behind him, tense as if expecting me to start yelling. "Well," I said evenly, "isn't this interesting?" Kevin's confidence faltered just slightly. He wasn't expecting calm, he was expecting the desperate mother he had left behind years ago. "Mom, we've been thinking," he began, but I raised my hand. "Kevin, dear?" I said in the same tone I used when he was 5 and drew on the living room wall with a marker. "Before you say another word, there's something you should know about your mother." I paused. 13 years teach you a lot about people, especially family who only appear when there's money involved. Nora stepped forward with a practiced smile. "Barbara, we know there's been distance, but family is family. We want to rebuild our relationship." "Rebuild?" I laughed, the sound feeling surprisingly good. "You can't rebuild something you deliberately tore down." I looked at both of them, two people circling what they thought was easy prey. "But please, come in. Let's talk about relationships. Let's talk about entitlement. Let's talk about what you believe you deserve from me." As they rolled their suitcases inside, I caught Kevin's reflection in the mirror. For a moment, he looked unsure. Good. Because what he was about to learn would test that arrogance. The real question wasn't whether I'd let them stay. It was whether they'd want to, once they understood who they were really dealing with. "This place is smaller than I expected," Nora said, scanning the house with assessing eyes. She looked like she was already redecorating in her head. Kevin's gaze was sharper, calculating value, not decor. If they thought I was still the broken woman begging for their attention, they were in for a rude awakening. I led them to the living room, the same place Kevin had delivered his parting insult all those years ago. "Sit," I said, gesturing to the sofa. "Let's catch up." For once, he actually followed my instruction. We heard about your good fortune," Nora began, clearly rehearsed. "Kevin's been so worried about you, haven't you, honey?" Kevin nodded quickly. "I have, Mom. When I heard about the lottery, I thought you shouldn't handle all that money alone. It's dangerous. People might try to take advantage." I nearly laughed. "Take advantage?" I repeated, "like showing up uninvited after 13 years, demanding a place to live and access to money you didn't earn?" "That's not what this is," Kevin said, but his eyes betrayed him. "This is about family, about making sure you're protected." "Protected?" I placed my cup down carefully. "Kevin, the last time we spoke, you told me I was an embarrassment to your new life. That successful people don't carry baggage, and I was your baggage. Those were your words." Colour drained from his face. Nora's smile flickered. "That was different," he muttered. "I was young, stressed." "You were 32, I interrupted you, old enough to understand that words have consequences. Old enough to know that doors you slam don't automatically reopen when your luck changes." Nora jumped in, her tone syrupy and strategic. "Barbara, we all say things we regret. What matters is we're here now, ready to be a family again." "Ready to be a family?" I echoed, amused. This from the woman who helped erase me from their lives. I looked at them both and felt something I hadn't in years. Control. They needed something from me. For the first time, I held the power. "Tell me," I said, leaning back, "exactly how much of my fortune do you think you're entitled to?" They exchanged a silent, knowing look, the same one I'd seen years ago when they plotted to cut me out. Only this time I recognized it for what it was. "It's not about entitlement," Kevin said, attempting sincerity and failing. It's about family obligation, about making sure you're not vulnerable to the wrong people." "The wrong people," I repeated. "You mean people like my own son and daughter-in-law who vanished when they no longer needed me?" For the first time, Nora's polished mask slipped. revealing the calculation beneath. Barbara, we understand you're upset, Nora began, but we're talking about your future, your security. This money could last you a lifetime if it's managed wisely. Managed properly, I repeated. By whom? You two? The same people who couldn't manage to send me a birthday card for over a decade. Kevin shifted in his seat. We've been busy building our lives, our careers. We had to focus on priorities. And now I'm a priority again, I said quietly. How convenient. I walked to the window and looked out over my garden. Tell me about these lives you've been building. I'm curious. How's that working out for you? Silence. When I turned around, Kevin was staring down at his hands. Nora's voice finally broke the quiet. We've had some setbacks, she said tightly. The market's been unpredictable. Kevin's consulting business hasn't taken off as we hoped. Setbacks, I said. Is that what we're calling them? Because from what I've heard, your setbacks include maxed out credit cards, a second mortgage, and a business that barely exists on paper. Kevin's head snapped up. How would you know that? I may have been cut out of your life, Kevin, but not out of this town. People talk, and they've been talking for years. I sat down again, watching them shrink into the sofa. They told me about the failed partnerships, bad investments, and the lifestyle you couldn't afford. And they also mentioned something else. Why you really ended our relationship 13 years ago. Nora paled. What do you mean? I mean the truth. It wasn't about success or embarrassment or any of the excuses you gave me. I smiled. The first genuine smile I'd felt in years. It was about the inheritance you expected from your father's uncle. The same uncle who made it clear he had no respect for people who couldn't care for their own parents. Kevin's face said it all. You cut me off because you thought Uncle Robert would leave you his fortune if you looked independent, free of family ties. I leaned forward. How did that work out for you? Kevin's face turned grey. Nora tried to stay composed, but I could see her mind racing. Uncle Robert left his money to the animal shelter, Kevin muttered. Every penny, I said, not hiding my satisfaction. Turns out he had strong opinions about those who abandon their parents for money. That's ancient history, Nora said quickly. What matters now is family, supporting each other in hard times. Family supporting each other, I repeated. That's rich coming from you. Tell me, Nora, when did you start thinking of me as family? Was it before or after you called me Kevin's burden at your housewarming party? Her eyes widened. You weren't supposed to hear that. But I did, I said evenly, along with plenty of other comments about how much better your lives would be once you handled the mother situation. I walked to the mantel and picked up a photo of Kevin at his college graduation, his arm around me, both of us smiling. For 13 years I thought I failed as a mother, but I didn't. I raised a kind, thoughtful son. The failure came after he met you. That's not fair, Kevin said weakly. Fair? I turned back to them. Fair would have been a conversation before you cut me off. Fair would have been honesty. Fair would have been treating me like a person, not an inconvenience. We made mistakes, Nora said, her voice trembling. But we're here now. We want to make things right. Make things right, I repeated. With my money. It's not about the money, Kevin said quickly, though his tone betrayed him. Really? Then let's test that. I took out my checkbook. If I wrote you a check for $50,000 right now, a generous gift to help with those setbacks, would you take it and leave? Their eyes lit up before Kevin even spoke. We couldn't accept that much, he said, already calculating how to spend it. But maybe we could discuss an arrangement. A loan, perhaps. A loan, I repeated. Of course. And I suppose you'd discuss the terms while living here, eating my food and enjoying my hospitality. Well, we are family, Nora said, as if that settled it. Yes, I said. We are family, and that's exactly why what happens next will hurt. I closed the checkbook with a sharp snap. Both of them flinched. The thing about family, I said, sitting back, is that it's supposed to go both ways. Loyalty, support, love. Not only when it's convenient. Mom, we know we haven't been perfect, Kevin started. Perfect? I laughed, the sound cutting through the room. Perfect would have been calling me on Mother's Day. Perfect would have been inviting me into your lives instead of pretending I didn't exist. What you did wasn't imperfect. It was intentional cruelty. Nora leaned forward, desperation creeping into her voice. Barbara, we're admitting our mistakes. We want to move forward, to build a better relationship. Build a better relationship, I repeated thoughtfully. Starting when? Starting the moment you heard about my lottery win, I said, watching them closely. How convenient that your sudden desire for family reconciliation coincides exactly with my change in financial circumstances. Kevin looked briefly ashamed, but Nora remained composed. People change, Barbara. People grow. We're not the same as we were 13 years ago. You're right about that, I said calmly. You're not the same people. You're older, poorer, and more desperate. But fundamentally, you're still exactly who you've always been. I walked to the window, not to see the view, but to let them feel the tension. Do you want to know what I did with my time over these 13 years while you were building your important lives? I paused, letting them consider the question. Neither answered. I learned. I took classes. I read books. I made new friends. I discovered I'm actually quite intelligent when I'm not being told I'm a burden. I turned to face them. I also learned about investing, financial planning, and protecting assets from people who might try to take advantage. Kevin's face went blank. What do you mean? I didn't just win the lottery and hide the money, Kevin. I hired professionals, good ones, the kind who protect wealthy people from family members with questionable intentions. You hired lawyers? Nora said, her voice flat. Among others, financial advisors, estate planners, even a private investigator. I smiled at their expressions. You'd be surprised how much a motivated person can learn when they have the resources to find out. You investigated us? Kevin's voice cracked. I investigated everyone, friends, relatives, charities, investments. When you suddenly have significant wealth, you learn fast that everyone wants something from you. I walked back toward my chair but didn't sit. The difference is most people are honest about their motives. Nora's mask was gone, replaced with something harder. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying showing up here with your suitcases, demanding space in my home and access to my money after 13 years of ignoring me, was a mistake. I finally sat, arranging my skirt and picking up my coffee, meeting both their eyes with calm. And if you think I'm the same woman you discarded years ago, you're going to be very disappointed. The silence stretched. Kevin looked unwell. Nora seemed to be calculating escape routes. Not done. I waited. The grandfather clock chimed 3 times. Over an hour had passed, and I continued. Let's talk about what you really want. Not the family reunion nonsense, not the concern for my well-being. Let's have an honest conversation about why you're really here. Kevin opened his mouth to speak, but I held up my hand. Before you answer, let me share some interesting information my investigators uncovered. I pulled a manila folder from the side table. Nora stared as if it were a coiled snake. For instance, I said, opening it, I learned you've been living beyond your means for nearly 5 years. Kevin's consulting business hasn't had a legitimate client in 8 months. Kevin went pale. How do you know that? He whispered. The same way I know about your maxed-out credit cards, the car loan, and the second mortgage you're behind on. I pulled out a sheet. The same way I know you've been borrowing from your parents, claiming it's for business expansion when it's really to keep the lights on. You had no right, Nora whispered, though it sounded hollow. No right? I laughed. I had every right the moment you showed up at my door making demands. Due diligence, they call it in the business world. Something you might have learned if either of you had ever run a successful business. Kevin slumped. We're in trouble. Real trouble. But you're my mother. That has to count for something. It counts for this, I said. I'm giving you one chance. One. To be honest, drop the act, stop manipulating and tell me what you need and why. They exchanged a look, silently communicating. Kevin straightened. We're going to lose everything, he admitted. House, cars, probably my parents' money too. We owe about $300,000 with no way to pay it back. 300,000? I repeated. That's quite a hole you've dug. We made bad investments, Nora added. Kevin's business partner embezzled most of our capital and vanished. By the time we realised, it was too late. For the first time they sounded truthful, not sympathetic, but interesting. And you thought showing up here with demands and suitcases was the best strategy? Kevin's voice was slow. We thought if we presented it as a family reunion, as wanting to spend time with you, it would be easier than admitting we need money. You told me this would be easier, I said. For whom? Kevin looked ashamed. For us, he admitted. At last, some honesty. Good, I replied, closing the folder and setting it aside. 300,000, I repeated, letting the number sit between us. That's an impressive amount of debt. Most people take decades to reach that. Kevin winced. Tell me about this business partner who supposedly embezzled your money, I prompted. Nora answered quickly. Marcus Williams, Kevin's college roommate. They started the consulting firm 5 years ago. I pulled out my phone. Funny thing about thorough investigators, I said, scanning my notes. Marcus didn't embezzle. He discovered his partner was diverting company funds to personal expenses and gambling, reported it, and dissolved the partnership to protect himself. The room went utterly quiet. That's not what happened, Kevin mumbled. Isn't it? I asked. Because according to the police report, yes, there's a police report, you've been under investigation for business fraud for 8 months. The district attorney hasn't decided whether to press charges. Nora went pale. How do you know about police reports? She whispered. The same way I know about the 3 maxed-out credit cards, the car loan and the second mortgage you're behind on, I said, pulling out a sheet. The same way I know you borrowed $50,000 from 3 different relatives using 3 different sob stories. Nora's protest, you had no right, sounded hollow. No right? I laughed. I had every right the moment you showed up demanding things. Due diligence, something you'd know if you'd ever run a sustainable business. Kevin slumped. We're in real trouble, but you're my mother. That must count for something. It counts for this, I said. I'll give you 1 chance. 1. Be honest. Drop the act, stop the manipulation, and tell me exactly what you need and why. They exchanged a look. Then Kevin confessed quietly. We're going to lose everything. The house, the cars, probably my parents' money too. We owe about $300,000 and have no way to pay it back. 300,000, I repeated. That's quite a hole. They explained. Bad investments, an embezzling partner who vanished, capital gone before they realised. For the first time since they arrived, their words sounded like the truth. Unsympathetic, but interesting. And you thought showing up with suitcases and demands was the best strategy? I asked. Kevin answered slowly. We thought if we framed it as a family reunion, wanting to spend time with you, it'd be easier than admitting we needed money. Easier for you, I said. Finally, honesty. I rose and walked to the window. What did I do these past 13 years while you built your important lives? I let the silence build until their attention was palpable. I learned. I took classes, read books, made new friends. I discovered I'm capable and competent when I'm not constantly told I'm a burden. I also learned about investing, financial planning, and protecting assets from people who might try to take advantage, I continued. Kevin went blank. What do you mean? He asked. I didn't stuff the money in a mattress, I said. I hired professionals, financial advisors, estate planners, lawyers, even a private investigator. Their expressions tightened. You investigated us? Kevin's voice cracked. I investigated everyone, I said. Friends, relatives, charities, investments. Significant wealth teaches you fast that everyone wants a piece. Nora's composure slipped, replaced by calculation. What are you saying? She asked. I'm saying showing up with suitcases and demands after 13 years of ignoring me was a mistake. I sat slowly, smoothing my skirt and taking a deliberate sip of coffee. If you think I'm the same woman you discarded, you'll be disappointed. The silence stretched. The hallway clock chimed 3 times. We'd been talking for over an hour. Let's be clear about why you're here, I said. Not family reunion rhetoric. What do you really want? Kevin reached for his rehearsed speech, but I raised a hand and produced a manila folder. Before you speak, let me share what my investigators found. Nora stared as if the folder were venomous. For example, you've been living beyond your means for 5 years. Kevin's consulting firm hasn't had a legitimate client in 8 months. Kevin went white. How do you know that? He breathed. The same way I know about your maxed-out cards and overdue mortgage, I replied. You've been borrowing from relatives under false pretenses. Nora's whisper, you had no right, was weak. I had every right when you marched in here demanding things, due diligence. Kevin sagged in his chair. You need help, I said bluntly. Therapy, addiction counselling, financial planning, probably legal representation. What you don't need is an enabler willing to throw money at you while you repeat destructive choices. Nora grew hysterical. So you're just going to let us lose everything? I'm going to let you face the consequences of your actions, I said. I opened the folder again and pulled out another page, a document that could either save them or finish them. My tone stayed measured. However, I added, I'm not completely heartless. After 13 years of wondering what I'd done wrong as a mother, I finally had the chance to see what kind of people they really were. Holding up a document, I said, "This is the contact information for a bankruptcy attorney who handles cases like yours. He's expensive but effective. He can help you navigate your legal issues and potentially keep you out of prison." Kevin looked up, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "You'd pay for a lawyer?" I said he's expensive, not that I'd pay for him, I corrected. I placed the paper on the coffee table. "You want real help? Here's what I'm willing to do. I will loan you enough money to retain this attorney and enroll in a legitimate debt counseling program. Not $300,000, not enough to maintain your lifestyle, just enough to keep you out of jail and start over with a clean slate." "How much?" Nora asked immediately. $25,000, half for the attorney, half for debt counseling. I sat ready for the most important part. "But there are conditions." "What kind of conditions?" "First, you both enter individual therapy, not couples counseling. You need to understand how you became people who con your own families." I raised a finger as Kevin started to protest. "Second, you make full restitution to everyone you've defrauded, relatives, Nora's parents, any clients. Everyone." That's impossible," Nora said. "Which brings me to condition 3. Get real jobs, steady employment, no schemes or consulting that doesn't pay bills. Stick with it until every debt is repaid." Kevin stared at me in disbelief. "Years of work. The rest of your lives," I corrected. "That's how long it takes to rebuild trust when you've broken it this badly." "And if we don't agree?" Nora asked. I smiled, a smile that made even the bravest flinch. "Then you walk out with nothing. And everyone you've deceived will know exactly who you are. Every relative, every friend, every person you conned gets a full report." "You wouldn't," Kevin whispered. "Try me," I said. "I've had 13 years to plan how I'd teach you about consequences. Don't test me now." The clock chimed 4 times. 2 hours had passed, and I could see the moment they realized their plan had backfired. "We need time to think," Nora said. "No," I corrected. "You need time to choose. Accept my offer and rebuild your lives the hard way, or continue looking for shortcuts. You can't do both, and you can't do either here." Kevin looked like a lost child. For a moment, I almost felt sorry. Almost. "One more thing," I said, pulling a sealed envelope from my desk. The return address was from a Denver law firm, dated 3 weeks ago, right after news of my lottery win spread. This arrived after my win. It's from a lawyer representing someone who's been looking for you both for a long time. Their faces drained of colour. "Who?" Nora whispered. "Marcus Williams," I said. "Your former business partner, the one you claimed embezzled from your company." Kevin's hands shook. "What does he want?" "He wants his money back. The $50,000 you took from the company before dissolving the partnership. He only discovered it after his accountant did a full audit following your accusations against him." "That's not true," Kevin whispered. "According to this letter, Marcus has been working with the district attorney to build a case. He's been waiting to see if you'd voluntarily make restitution. Your lottery win prompted him to see if you'd do the right thing." Nora gripped the sofa arm until her knuckles whitened. "Marcus's offer mirrors mine. Make full restitution and accept responsibility, or face criminal charges. Only difference, his deadline is tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Kevin's voice cracked. 5 p.m. to contact his attorney and arrange payment," I added, watching their composure crumble. "So your offer isn't just about family reconciliation?" Nora asked. "It's about keeping you out of prison," I said. The silence was heavy, their minds racing for any overlooked angle. "You planned this?" Nora said finally. "I have," I admitted. "Marcus reached out the day after my lottery win to see if I'd help clean up your mess. I told him that depended entirely on whether you were willing to take responsibility for your actions." I walked to the mantel and lifted a photo of Kevin at his college graduation. "Marcus is a good man. He didn't deserve what you did to him." After 13 years of wondering what I'd done wrong as a mother, I finally understood the kind of people they really were. Neither did your Aunt Sarah, nor Nora's parents, nor anyone else you've hurt, I said. Kevin was crying now, tears streaming down his face. I never meant for it to get this bad, but it did, I replied. And now you have to decide what kind of person you want to be going forward. I set the photo down and faced them. You can accept my help and Marcus's mercy, work hard to make things right, and maybe salvage some piece of your integrity. Or you can keep running, lying, and looking for easy solutions to problems you created. Some choice, Nora muttered. It's the only choice that matters, I said. The choice to be honest. They finally looked at each other, and I could see 13 years of poor decisions weighing on their shoulders. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with coffee and the newspaper, waiting. Marcus Williams had given them until 5 p.m, but people facing prison rarely sleep well. At 8:47 a.m, the phone rang. Mom, Kevin's voice was raw. We accept your conditions, all of them. Both of you? Yes, Nora agrees too. We want to make this right. I set down my coffee and leaned back. Kevin, before I transfer any money or make calls, answer honestly. If I hadn't won the lottery, if I was still just your broke mother living in a small apartment, would you have ever called me? Would you have tried to rebuild our relationship? The pause was long, almost unbearable. No, he said finally. Probably not. I was too ashamed, too proud, and too scared you wouldn't forgive me. It was the first completely honest thing he'd said since showing up at my door. It hurt, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you for telling me the truth, I said. Now I have something to tell you. I forgive you. Not because you're sorry now, not because you need help, but because holding on to anger for 13 years was poisoning me more than it was hurting you. I picked up my coffee, surprised at how steady my hands were. I forgive you, Kevin, but forgiving you doesn't mean trusting you. Trust must be earned back, and that takes time. I understand, he said. Do you really understand? Earning back trust means years of consistent behaviour, therapy, hard work, and proving you've changed, not just promising you will. I understand, he said again, and this time I believed him. Good, I'll call the attorney this morning and Marcus this afternoon. You and Nora need to be in their offices by the end of the day. And Kevin, this is your last chance. Lie again, take shortcuts, or hurt anyone I care about, and you're on your own forever. I know, he said. After hanging up, I sat quietly, reflecting on second chances and the difference between forgiveness and enabling. Some might say I was too harsh, that family should stick together no matter what. But those people had never spent 13 years wondering what they did wrong, never felt the pain of being discarded by their own child, and never had to rebuild their sense of self after being told they were worthless. I'd learned an important lesson. Love without boundaries isn't love, it's fear dressed up in prettier clothes. My phone buzzed. It was my sister Sarah, heard through the grapevine that Kevin showed up. How did it go? I typed back, he's getting a second chance. Whether he deserves it remains to be seen. And how are you doing? I looked around my house, my sanctuary, the life I'd built after losing everything I thought mattered. A life where I made my own choices, set my own boundaries, and never again begged for a place at a table that should have been mine. I typed, I'm doing just fine. Better than fine. I'm free. 2 years later, Kevin would repay every penny he'd stolen. Nora would discover she was quite capable of managing a small business when not chasing shortcuts. And I would wake up every morning in my own house, living my life on my terms, finally understanding what it meant to be truly wealthy. Not because of lottery numbers, but because I would never again accept less than I deserved. The money was nice, though. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.